Welcome to the lettering portion video of the IDS training. Within IDS, you can insert any TrueType font as well as pre-digitized fonts. To insert a font or to insert lettering, just on the right-hand side of our screen on our Create toolbar, if we click on the Insert Text icon, we'll left-click to activate the Insert Text dialog box. Within the Input Text dialog box, your cursor is blinking, and this means that we can type in text. So what we'll do here is we'll type in digitizing, and if we'd like to enter in multiple lines of text, we can hit enter. We'll visit multiple lines of text later. After we input our text, we can then change the attributes of our text just by highlighting either the whole item just with a left click, hold, and drag. You can also highlight individual items with a left click, hold, and drag, or multiple with a left click, hold, and drag over the lettering that you want to change. So in this example, we're going to highlight all of our lettering. Underneath our lettering, our text property tools are available. The font list will tell us all the TrueType fonts that we do have available in our Windows system. TrueType fonts are fonts that are housed in your fonts folder within your Windows system, and everybody's is a little bit different from each other. If we use our drop down arrow, we can see with the TT in front of our letters that those are TrueType fonts that we can use. And as we scroll down, we can see all the different TrueType fonts that are available to us. As I said before, everybody's computer is a little bit different, so everybody's going to have different fonts. Some fonts are the same on all Windows systems, but as I scroll up, there is one thing I want to show you, is that we do have fonts that are pre-digitized with an @ sign. Now if they have a TT and an @ sign, that means it's a TrueType font. If it's just an @ sign, it will just be a pre-digitized font. And if we left click on the font, it will show us a preview of the font. So let's scroll down here and we'll choose a TrueType font. If you just left click on the TrueType font, it will give you a preview on the right hand side as well as your input text box. You can change the font by using the drop down arrow that I just showed you, or you can use your up and down arrow keys and actually go through the different fonts one by one and see a preview of it. You can also jump from font to font by starting to type in the font. Now you do have to make sure that you are selected on a font. So if I am sure of a font that I want to use and I know the name of it, I can start typing it in. For example, I'll type in the letter P and it goes to my fonts that begin with a P. And then I can go through here and I can choose my font. So here we'll just go back up to our regular, we'll go back up to our A fonts and we'll go back to a font that I like. The next thing is our size. Now our size is 25.4. I am working in millimeters. You can see that at the top of my dialog box. But size is going to be according to your capital letter. 25.4 is about an inch. I can change the size just by using the drop down arrow and choosing a size from the drop down box, or I can actually left click, hold, and drag, highlight the size, and type in my own size. The next option is our text path. With our different text paths that we have available, we have auto, line, arc, ellipse, freehand, and we actually have another one that is not showing because I don't have an item up on screen, but it's also called existing outline. For now, we will leave the text path as auto, meaning that it will put it on the best fit line. We can bold the text just by left clicking inside the bold box, placing a check mark. Italicize. Now these are going to be for TrueType fonts. You can do one or both, or don't select anything. We also have the ability to use an art font. An art font will be a shape that our text can fall into. We'll leave that as is, as we'll visit that later. We also have the option to change the way that the lettering sits on the baseline or the text path. We have above the line, centered on the line, and below the line. We will leave that as above the line right now. We also have some options over on the right hand side. Small lettering stitch, if we check mark that, that will actually change our settings to optimize for small lettering for embroidery. We also have the ability to do a vertical layout if we want our letters to be stacked on top of each other. We can also change the color just by left clicking on the color chip. We can change the color right within our screen on our insert text, or we can change that as soon as we get into the program. We'll press OK to change our color, press OK to input the text. As soon as our lettering is entered into the program, we can see that it is selected. It is left click selected because it has the 8 black nodes surrounding our design. Right now we are viewing the design in outline view. I can tell this because my outline view icon is selected at the top, it is pressed in, and also outline is at the top of my main menu bar. To put stitches into our lettering, we'll just hit the Go button on the bottom right hand side. So if we left click on Go, it will automatically input the stitching. We can also see that our lettering is now purple because that is the color that we changed it to. With our lettering left clicked, we can see that we've got some tools available to us that allow us to change the outcome of the lettering. We have 3 arrows on the right hand side of our lettering, as well as white diamonds underneath each letter. We also have an edit button directly to the right of the last letter. As you can see, our lettering is on a straight baseline, and our lettering does sit above the baseline. Our lettering is also automatically spaced, and that does indicate to me that it is on an automatic text path, meaning that it put it on the best fit straight line and did the spacing accordingly, according to the letters and the font. Now on the right hand side of our screen, we will first go over the arrows. These tools allow us to change the way the lettering is laid out. The arrow that points to the right, that's next to the last letter, as I place my cursor over on top of it, my cursor turns into a crosshair. Once I get the crosshair, I will left click, hold, and drag. As I'm left clicking, holding, and dragging, I'm dragging to the right, which will space my letters out further apart from each other. Or if I drag it to the left, they will take that spacing and squish it together. I can also keep dragging to the left and actually inverse the letters. And if I continue doing so, our letter spacing will get farther and farther apart from each other. I'll bring it back to where we can actually read the lettering, and then I will let go. Once I let go, my lettering will sit as I have indicated. Another arrow that's directly to the right of the last letter is an arrow pointing up. As I place my cursor over that arrow, again it will turn into a crosshair. Once I get the crosshair, I will left click, hold, and drag, and I'm dragging down to the bottom right, and I'm dragging more in a circle, and as I drag in a circle, I can stair step my letters. I can bring them completely vertical. So you can make your letters vertical without choosing that vertical option in your insert text box. I can drag that all the way around. It will go backwards, stair stepping, and I'll bring it right on back. I do have an arrow, one last arrow on the right hand side. It's pointing up above the last letter. As I place my cursor over that arrow, it'll turn again into a crosshair, left click, hold, and drag, and it'll stretch my letters from the bottom of the baseline up, or the bottom of the lettering and up. Or if I drag that down, it will squish my letters or make them smaller. I can also keep dragging beyond the baseline, and as I drag beyond the baseline, it will actually mirror those letters. Now as I do change the size of our lettering, I will want to regenerate my stitching, which is the Go button, in order to recalculate the stitching according to the size. I also have white diamonds underneath each letter. These white diamonds will control the letter that's above the diamond. As I place my cursor over a diamond, it'll turn into a crosshair. I'll left click on that diamond to select it. Once it's selected, it will turn green. I'll place my cursor back on top of that diamond. As soon as it turns into a crosshair again, I'll left click, hold, and drag. I can then drag it to the right or left, depending on the baseline, and it will actually move that letter along the baseline. If I'd like to move multiple letters on the baseline, I can then hit my Control key, place my cursor over on top of the diamond that I'd like to select, or the letter that I'd like to select. It will turn green. I can then let go of my Control key, place my cursor over either diamond, it doesn't matter which one, but I need to make sure that my cursor turns into that crosshair. Once I get that crosshair, I will then left click, hold, and drag, and I can drag that wherever I'd like on the baseline. If I'd like to deselect, I'll hold my Control key again. As I'm holding that Control key, I will left click on that diamond. It will deselect it. Same thing with this one. I'll hold the Control key, turns into that crosshair, left click to deselect it, and now no diamonds are selected. I also have the ability to change the lettering and edit the lettering, as in editing the way that the word is spelled, changing each individual letter. I can change the font, I can change the size, and just to do this, I can hit the Edit button next to the last letter. So as I place my cursor over the Edit button, I will left click. Notice that my text box, instead of saying Insert Text, it now says Update Text. Our lettering is selected and is highlighted, and with that highlighted, I can change what is highlighted. I can change the font, I can change the size, and I can change the text path, as well as the style, using an art font, changing the way that it sits on the line, and also opting to use a small letter stitch. For now, what we'll do is we will change the font. We'll change it to just an Arial font, and we'll also bold our lettering just to see the differences, and we'll also change it to centered on the line. Once I press OK, I did not change the text path. Once I press OK, you'll see that our lettering now changes on screen. Our lettering is now striking through the baseline, in the center of the baseline. I'll go ahead and hit the Go button to insert the stitches. And after I do so, we can now see that our lettering font is actually different. And again, our lettering is now striking through the baseline. We still have the ability to change the way the letters sit on the baseline with our white diamonds, as well as our white arrows. We can also edit our lettering as much as we want just by clicking on that Edit button, and we can change the text type as far as changing the lettering, going in here and editing our lettering, changing the font style, the size, text path, and all these other options that are available to us. I'll just go ahead and hit Cancel, and we now have different lettering within here. Next, we will cover the different text paths that we have available. With the different text paths that we have available to us, there are different ways that we can apply them. Now, with this lettering on screen, what we'll do is we're actually going to go ahead and start a new design. We'll close this one out. I'm not going to save it, and I'll just go to File and New for a new design. To insert text on the right-hand side, we will click on the Insert Text icon, the first icon on the Create toolbar. When we left-click on that, it will automatically input the last thing that we input for the insert text. We'll leave everything as is except for the text path itself. we're going to change the auto text path from auto to line. With this option here, once we press OK, our cursor will turn into a crosshair. Now it does input the design on screen and puts it on that auto text path, but here we have the ability to draw our own line. I'm going to start on the left hand side of the screen, and as I place my cursor, I will left click, hold, and drag my cursor to the right hand side. As I'm dragging to the right hand side, I'm also dragging up and down, and you can see I'm doing it at an angle. I can do it straight across. I can do whatever angle I'd like. Once I'm happy with the line, I will let go of my left click, and now my lettering will fit on the baseline. Also, I want you to notice that our lettering does fit on top of the baseline, and our lettering will always go perpendicular to our baseline. To input the stitching and the lettering, I'll go ahead and hit the Go button on my Create toolbar down at the bottom. I'll left click to input our stitching, and now our lettering is on the baseline we have defined. The next baseline, we'll just go ahead and click on Insert Lettering again, and it will do the insert text. This time I am going to change the color so we can see the difference in the lettering that we input. And text path, we will change the text path from line to an arc. I'll left click to select and left click on OK. Again, it does put it on the best fit automatic text path, but our lettering but our cursor is now a crosshair. With that crosshair, it's a little bit different than left clicking, holding, and dragging to make the straight line. This tool allows us to make 3 points. I'm going to start on the left hand side. I will left click to make my first endpoint of the text path. I will drag the line over to the right hand side, and I can drag it at an angle or however I'd like. This time I'm going to put it on a straight line, so I will then left click for my second endpoint. With these two left clicks, if I don't like the left click that I made, I can always hit my backspace key and go backwards one at a time. But this time I'm going to move my cursor over on top of the line. You can see my cursor is now connected to the baseline. And in order to bow my arc, I do like to be towards the center of the baseline. I'm moving my cursor up and down, or my mouse up and down, and that allows me to change the arc path. As soon as I'm happy with the arc path, I will left click to set that arc path, and now our lettering sits on top. We will then go ahead and hit the Go button, and as I left click on Go, we can now see our lettering is on an arced text path. With the next baseline, again, we'll go ahead and go to the Insert Text box. I'll left click on Insert Text, and here we'll change the text path from auto to ellipse. We'll left click OK, and once we left click OK, again it puts it on the best fit baseline, but my cursor is a crosshair. With the crosshair, I'll start on the left hand side, and because we are drawing a circle, we'll left click, hold, and drag from one corner to the opposite corner. In this case, I am dragging from the upper left hand corner down to the lower right hand corner, and you can see I'm dragging a circle. As I keep dragging, you can see my screen will move along with the circle. If I do hold the Control key while dragging, you can see that our circle will actually change into an oval. Once I'm happy with the circle or the oval, again I'm still holding the Control key, I will let go of the left click. Once I let go of the left click, I'll go ahead and hit the Go button, and once I hit Go, it will put the stitching in there. Again, we'll click on Insert Text, and I'll left click on Insert Text. We'll change the color again just to see the different color, or just to see the different baseline. Press OK. We'll change that from an auto text path to a freehand. With the freehand text path, I'll left click to select, left click on OK, and again, cursor goes to a crosshair and the lettering is put on the best fit baseline. For a freehand, I actually can plot points for the baseline to sit on. Left clicks are going to be corner points and right clicks will be smooth points. I will start on the left hand side, left click, left click, left click. Then I can right click. If I would like to change it, right click and right click. If I don't like a point that I made, I can always hit backspace and go back one point at a time. In this case, I'll go back all the way to the beginning, start from scratch. This time I'll do a left click, a right click, right click, right click, right click, and left click. Once I'm happy with all the points and I'm finished with my baseline, you can see that my cursor is still connected to the baseline, but I'll just hit enter to end inputting, hit go to input stitches, and you can see that my lettering will now fit on the best fit. My lettering will now fit on the baseline that I had made myself. I'll go ahead and zoom this whole design so we can see the different text paths that we were working with. Next, we will go over some of the different tools that you have available in the text paths. With each text path, we do have the same type of tools that are available to us whenever we do left click. We did already go over the straight baseline tools, and if we left click on the first digitizing word, we can see that we do have those three arrows and we have the white diamonds. The arrow pointing up above the last letter will stretch our letters. Just left click, hold, and drag once it turns into that crosshair, or it will squish the letters or mirror our letters. The arrow pointing up next to the last letter will stair step our letters. Now, because we had put it on a different type of baseline with a diagonal, it looks a little funny whenever we change this around. We also have the arrow pointing to the right next to the last letter, which if we left click, hold, and drag will change the spacing of our letters. Now I will left click on the arc text path, and with the arc text path we still do have the three arrows, but the arrows are going to do something a little bit different. Now the white diamonds on each text path will do exactly the same thing, in that they control the letter that's above the diamond, or the letter that's associated with that diamond. If I place my cursor over the arrow pointing to the right of the last letter, it will, as I left click, hold, and drag, it will change the spacing, but you can see that I can actually input it eventually into a complete circle. I'm just left clicking, holding, and dragging to the right and left. It will squish my letters together, but it will not inverse them as it did with the straight baseline. The arrow pointing up next to the last letter will actually stretch that arc out or in, meaning that it will be a larger circle or a smaller circle for that arc. The last arrow, the arrow pointing up above the last letter, will also stretch our letters, squish them down, or mirror our letters. I'll go ahead and move that off to the side. Now the next baseline, when I left click, we only have two arrows. Arrow pointing up above the last letter, and again this one will do the same thing in that it will stretch our letters, squish them down, or mirror. But this arrow pointing to the right will actually make our circle larger or smaller. So once we get that crosshair, I will left click, hold, and drag, make our circle larger or smaller, or in this case our ellipse larger or smaller. The last one down, our freehand, if we left click on that, we have three arrows again. The arrow pointing to the right will extend our baseline. As we put our cursor over on top of that arrow, it'll turn into a crosshair. Once I left click and hold, It'll extend the baseline, but only in the direction of the endpoints of the beginning and end of the baseline. So stretch it together, or stretch it apart, or squish it together. And also it will inverse on this one. The arrow pointing up next to the last letter will do something a little bit different. In a sense, it is like stair stepping, and it will actually stair step, or depending upon your baseline, it will do the appropriate changes. And that's just left clicking, holding, and dragging as soon as I have that cursor turning into a crosshair. The arrow pointing up above the last letter, again, it will do the same thing as the other baselines. It will stretch those letters tall, squish them down, or mirror. So once I am finished changing those tools, or changing the lettering, if I do change the size or I change the shape of our lettering, we will want to hit the Go button on the right hand side to regenerate our stitching. Now, again, for each of these baselines, our lettering, our diamonds will do exactly the same thing, and that it will move the lettering along the baseline as soon as we click or select the diamond. Again, to select the diamond, you put your cursor on top of the diamond. It'll turn into a crosshair. You left click once to select. Once it's green, you can then left click, hold, and drag, and it will drag anywhere on that baseline. If you'd like to deselect an item, hold the Control key on your keyboard and left click. Or if you'd like to select multiple, keep holding Control and left click. With each text path, we do have the same type of tools that are available to us whenever we do left click. We did already go over the straight baseline tools, and if we left click on the first digitizing word, we can see that we do have those 3 arrows and we have the white diamonds. The arrow pointing up above the last letter will stretch our letters. Just left click, hold, and drag once it turns into that crosshair. Or it will squish the letters or mirror our letters. The arrow pointing up next to the last letter will stair step our letters. Now, because we had put it on a different type of baseline with a diagonal, it looks a little funny whenever we change this around. We also have the arrow pointing to the right next to the last letter, which if we left click, hold, and drag, will change the spacing of our letters. Now I will left click on the arc text path, and with the arc text path, we still do have the 3 arrows, but the arrows are going to do something a little bit different. Now the white diamonds on each text path will do exactly the same thing, and that they control the letter that's above the diamond, or the letter that's associated with that diamond. If I place my cursor over the arrow pointing to the right of the last letter, it will, as I left click, hold, and drag, it will change the spacing, but you can see that I can actually input it eventually into a complete circle. I'm just left clicking, holding, and dragging to the right and left. It will squish my letters together, but it will not inverse them as it did with the straight baseline. The arrow pointing up next to the last letter will actually stretch that arc out or in, meaning that it will be a larger circle or a smaller circle for that arc. The last arrow, the arrow pointing up above the last letter, will also stretch our letters, squish them down, or mirror our letters. I'll go ahead and move that off to the side. Now the next baseline, when I left click, we only have 2 arrows. Arrow pointing up above the last letter And again, this one will do the same thing in that it will stretch our letters, squish them down, or mirror. But this arrow pointing to the right will actually make our circle larger or smaller. So once we get that crosshair, I will left click, hold, and drag, make our circle larger or smaller, or in this case our ellipse larger or smaller. The last one down, our freehand, if we left click on that, we have 3 arrows again. The arrow pointing to the right will extend our baseline. As we put our cursor over on top of that arrow, it'll turn into a crosshair. Once I left click and hold, it'll extend the baseline, but only in the direction of the endpoints of the beginning and end of the baseline. So stretch it together, or stretch it apart, or squish it together. And also it will inverse on this one. The arrow pointing up next to the last letter will do something a little bit different. In a sense, it is like stair stepping, and it will actually stair step, or depending upon your baseline, it will do the appropriate changes. And that's just left clicking, holding, and dragging as soon as I have that cursor turning into a crosshair. The arrow pointing up above the last letter, again, it will do the same thing as the other baselines. It will stretch those letters tall, squish them down, or mirror. So once I am finished changing those tools, or changing the lettering, if I do change the size or I change the shape of our lettering, we will want to hit the Go button on the right hand side to regenerate our stitching. Now, again, for each of these baselines, our lettering, our diamonds will do exactly the same thing, and that it will move the lettering along the baseline as soon as we click or select the diamond. Again, to select the diamond, you put your cursor on top of the diamond. It'll turn into a crosshair. You left click once to select. Once it's green, you can then left click, hold, and drag, and it will drag anywhere on that baseline. If you'd like to deselect an item, hold the Control key on your keyboard and left click. Or if you'd like to select multiple, keep holding Control and left click. Lastly, on all this lettering, we can see that when we do left click on the text path, or we left click on the lettering itself, we have the ability to hit the edit button. And when we click on the edit button, it does allow us to update our text, meaning that we can change the text paths, the size, the font, so on and so forth. What I'd like to do here is change this to centered on the line and press OK, and I can just see how it affects my text path. You can really see how this affects our text on the path just by clicking the edit button on the arc text path, changing it from above the line to centered on the line. Press OK. You can see the spacing can be a little bit different. We'll hit the edit button again, change it to below the line, and we'll just move that off to the side to see how that works, and hit OK. Centered on the line, press OK. My personal favorite is to use centered on the line on most of my arc paths, as well as the ellipse path. If I'll click Edit, I'll change that to centered on the line. We'll move this off to the side so we can see the actual change happen. Press OK, and you can see our lettering change. So depending upon how you have your lettering sit on the baseline can affect the way that it looks. Now the last thing we're going to go over is the last baseline, called Existing Outline. And for that one, we're going to close out this design. We won't save it, and we'll go to a new design, File, and New. In order to show a design or a lettering design on an existing outline, we need to either open a design that we have created or make a new design that we are digitizing ourselves. So for this example, I'm actually going to insert an image with the Insert Image icon. I'll left click on that on our Create toolbar. Choose this simple piece of artwork, left click, and press OK. In my image processor, I'll leave everything as is, press OK. I will then change my size to 150. In my resize box, it'll automatically change Y with the maintain aspect ratio check marked. Press OK, and now I will go ahead and generate my stitches. I will turn off the background image with the hide view image icon at the top, and this is just very basic inserting image overview. There are more in-depth videos on the insert image. If you visit those videos, you'll get more of a training on that one. But for this purpose, what we're going to do is we are going to put our text on a baseline that's already existing, or on an outline, I should say, that's already existing. And what I'd like to do is I'd like my text to sit on this arc of the fan. So on the right hand side of my screen, I'll left click on Insert Text, and as I left click on that, it does input what I had last input as far as my insert text goes. I'm actually going to change this, I'm going to delete this, and type in my name. After I type in my name, I will then change the text path from Auto to Existing Outline, and within the existing outline I can change the offset. At 0, it will fit directly on the baseline. If I offset it positive, it will sit above or outside. If I do it negative, it will set inside. I will leave that at 0, press OK, and after I press OK, my lettering is actually in there. It's a little hard to see because it is right in the center of the design. In order to set my baseline, my cursor is now crosshair. I will left click to enter the first point, left click to select. You can see I'm making a point, and that outline is now highlighted in red. I then have to make a second point for my other endpoint, left click, and as I do that, I can move my cursor over the top and it will turn blue, or the bottom and it will turn blue. So I have two possible text paths that I can choose from. I want to choose the top text path, so as soon as my cursor is over that text path and that text path is blue, I will left click to set. Now you can see my lettering will fit exactly on that existing outline. I can then use the tools that are available to me as far as the arrows as well as the diamonds. We'll go ahead and hit go to input our stitching, and we can see here we can now change our lettering as we'd like. I will hit edit here, and as I hit edit, it does say that it is a current freehand. We're going to change that current freehand back to existing outline, so I have to define my existing outline again. But this time we will change the offset. This time I'm going to take that offset. We're working in millimeters. I'm going to left click, hold, and highlight so that our so that our measurement is highlighted. I will change that to 2 millimeters, so it'll sit above our baseline 2 millimeters. Press OK, and now I can set the beginning and end points. This time I will set them here, left click to select, and here left click to select. Then I'll place my cursor over that baseline, left click till it's blue, or when it's blue, and now you can see that my lettering is now, or my baseline is now 2 millimeters above what I had selected. I'll then regenerate my stitches. Even though I didn't change the lettering and anything, you won't be able to really see a change. But you can now see that after changing the offset, it actually sits outside, or if I did it negatively, it would sit inside. So let's try the negative. We'll go ahead and hit edit. We'll change it from current freehand to existing outline. and change that to a -2 instead of a +2. We'll press OK, and again we'll start here with a left click. You have to make sure that you're exactly on that baseline. Left click for your other endpoint. When it's blue, I left click and it sits inside that area 2 millimeters. So you can see that it's sitting negatively. A couple more things on lettering. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and close this design out. I'm not going to save it. And we'll go to a new design. We'll go to the insert text, and again it will default to the last thing that we input. But what I'd like to show you in this item is while it's selected on an auto text path, we'll choose the vertical layout so we can see what that does. With the vertical layout, I'll just place a left click inside that box and I'll put a check mark there. Press OK, and when we press OK, it's hard to see because we don't have the whole thing zoomed in on. It will actually lay out our letters vertically without us having to do the stair stepping or anything like that. So we'll go ahead and hit go. We still do have the tools. You can see you've got the 3 arrows as well as the white diamonds. We're going to go ahead and close this out, and we're going to go to a new design, and we'll go back to the insert text. And with the insert text, we do have something kind of neat here called art font. In my opinion, the art font looks best with capital letters. But first, before we type anything in, I'm just going to deselect this vertical layout. And with our letters highlighted, I'll hit the backspace. And in all caps, I'm going to type in my name. I'll also highlight that, and we're going to change the size to about 1 inch, which is 25.4. Or here we'll just choose 25, and we'll use an art font. With the art fonts, you have several different shapes that you can put your lettering in. Now each shape will be a little bit different in the sense of the tools that will be available to you or what pull points you have. And with this one, what we'll do is we will choose the upward arch. I'll left click to select, press OK with a left click, and left click again. Once we do that, you can see that our font will now fit in the shape of this shape that I chose. I do have yellow diamonds instead of our white triangles, and these yellow diamonds, depending upon which shape that you choose, will do something different. As I place my cursor over a yellow diamond, I left click, hold, and drag, and you can see this actually will extend my ends or make them smaller, so my first and last letters will be a little bit smaller. And on the right hand side here, I place my cursor over the yellow diamond, it turns into a crosshair. Left click, hold, and drag. I drag to the right or to the left, and it will stretch apart the baseline or stretch apart the shape or squish it together. Once I'm happy, I'll hit the go button and left click off to the side, and you can see that our letters arc a little bit. It may be a little difficult to see with this font, so let's go ahead and hit the edit button, and we'll change this to an Arial font, more of a block font. Press OK, and you can now see the change a little bit better here. We can squish our letters together and hit go, and now our letters will fit inside that shape. Thanks for watching IDS Lettering Basics.